Guys, how are we doing today?
Hey guys,
very good.
Romeo's looking good.
You in particular.
Well, thank you.
Love the haircut.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Are we going to go there?
Are we?
His tail is very bushy, I can tell you that.
Anyway,
I'm making you look good.
response.
That's my job.
By the way, what day is it today?
Today is Romeo Day. And what did we say about Romeo Day? Every day is Romeo Day.
There we go.
There you go.
We just lost our 3 subscribers.
No. They just, they're settling in.
All right.
They're excited.
Well,
They're excited.
They're
Welcome.
trying to.
We're not going to
Everyone's
disappoint.
Everyone gets excited when you're around, Aki. What
Especially
can
when
we
I
say?
look this good.
There you go.
Modesty.
Excuse me.
One of my qualities.
So, guys,
What we talking about?
well, before we discuss what we're going to talk about, we should take an opportunity to welcome back our viewers and listeners and to thank them for their ongoing support.
It's true, I didn't care about them.
And to remind them, Nuran, that
They should.
subscribe. Please subscribe. We would appreciate it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And send us ideas and give us feedback.
Yes, we would love to hear what
it's important.
your thoughts are on the topics we have covered or topics you would like to see us cover in the future. So please let us know. All right. With that out of the way,
What are we talking about?
let's talk about the importance of financial acumen. I don't think it applies certainly to people in our age group. In fact, it might be late for people in our age group, but for people of all ages, it's vitally important in my mind that people at least have a fundamental grasp on basic fundamental issues. And why don't we ask Dominic to get us started on this topic?
The accountant.
Yeah. Well, the basic rule everybody should follow. You cannot spend more than you earn.
Bingo.
Number one. But you should spend a lot less than what you earn because you need to put some aside for rainy days. We've had a few rainy days lately, so that's the first rule.
So Dominic, let's before we move on to second, third, and fourth rules, with that first rule out of the way,
Yeah.
what about people
Thank you.
who make the statement that based on what I earn, it's impossible for me to live
Within my means.
within my means? In other words, spending less than I earn.
Well, bullshit.
Okay, expand on that.
Well, that's what you earn. Figure it out. Okay.
You don't need that iPhone.
You don't need that iPhone, that's it. I mean, at some point, it's about sacrifices.
Yeah, which many people today are not prepared to
Exactly.
make, and that is an issue.
Exactly.
But let me take a step back and ask, with rent prices soaring to current levels, with the price of food, with the price of clothing being what it is, isn't there a minimum requirement income-wise in order for people to afford the basic necessities?
Of course there is. But, there's always second jobs. You need to figure it out.
Right.
The government cannot figure everything out for you.
Certainly not.
Exactly.
In fact, there's not much the government can figure out for you.
Yeah, there are sacrifices. I understand. But it's all about sacrifices. If you can't afford an iPhone, you can't afford it.
Yeah, but we're not talking about iPhones. We're talking about people that have to cut back on their food budgets.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you. I used to work in the convenience store industry. Okay, our convenience stores that were in low-income areas were our best performers. Okay, why? Because people that, let's say on welfare, they buy piecemeal. They don't want to, like today, if you look at specials and chase specials and make a little bit of an effort, you can manage. You can manage. It's because there's always laziness that comes into play. I'm not saying everybody, but a good portion of them.
Yeah, but I'd say the vast majority of working people today are struggling. If you look at the numbers and you look at how rent has exploded in the last 3 years compared to incomes.
Okay, but we're not talking about the plight of the poor at this point. We're talking about financial acumen, right? So let's kind of step back again and go back to what Dominic said about spending less than you earn. And again, obviously there's a floor to that statement. If you're earning $10,000 a year, you're not going to be able to afford rent and food.
Exactly.
But at a certain point, whatever that number is, 25, 30, 40, 50,000, whatever that number is, or family income above a certain point, you have enough to have a roof over your head, clothes on yourself, and the ability to feed yourself, clothe yourself, whatever, all of that stuff. So now the question becomes, okay, well, how do you manage that? And I think the question you're asking is, why is financial acumen so important in life? Because if you can't manage, if you don't know how to, at a minimum, put together a budget for yourself,
right,
put together scenarios, say, okay, well, I think, if you don't know how much you spend in a year, if I ask you, how much do you spend in a year? And you don't know.
No, a lot of people don't.
Well, that's an issue.
So you say a lot of people.
Yeah.
Would you be prepared to say, based on personal experience, that most people don't know how much they spend in a year?
Because I've heard it recently, guys our age telling me, well, all I need is $50,000 a year for my retirement. Really? Really?
So I frame it differently. I've asked the question point blank to a number of people that I know. How much do you spend a year? Because some people have asked me to assist them with managing finances and so on. And so yes, okay, I'm happy to help. It's going to require some disclosure. So if you don't feel comfortable with that, then probably can't help you much. But the first question I'm going to ask you is, how much do you spend a year? Yeah. That's the baseline. Yeah.
And
because
have you gotten good responses back, or
most people I ask that question of don't know. And when I say most, over 90% of people I ask that question of do not know how much they spend in a year.
So if you're a listener and you're listening to this and you can't answer that question, then you're one of the 90+% that Pat's talking about. And maybe what you should do is take a look at your finances. Just take a look at inputs and outputs. I mean, accounting, basic accounting is...
it's not even accounting. It's simple math.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, very true.
Exactly.
And by the way, it's so much easier to control what you spend than what you earn, because typically, unless you're a gig economy worker or someone who can drive overtime or something, most people have a certain bound of salary that they're going to make, and they can increase it maybe a little bit, but not by much, if at all.
Yeah.
But what you can actually control 100% is your spending. How often do you go out to get to a restaurant? Do you buy stuff piecemeal, like you said, or do you try and get a deal? Do you look for coupons or deals in for your food? All of these.
But I see something different in that. I also see like working people who are struggling, who look at every cent.
We're not talking about
I don't know how you've determined that they look at every cent.
Because how are you going to pay? They're looking at how they're going to be able to balance, the fees, for kids' activities, their rent.
Sorry, whoa. Kids' activities. What activities?
Schools now, public schools. People, parents are asked for top-ups. Okay. Constantly. So there's one example. But all I'm saying is that working people who are, whose backs are up against the wall are very conscious, of every cent that they have to spend and where's it going to come from.
That's not been my experience. I would say most people are conscious of the fact that they don't have sufficient funds to pay for the things that they're being asked to pay for, but they have no idea
I know
how much they spend per year.
So let's not go into this rabbit hole of how many people know versus don't know. I think when it comes to the base people who are trying to survive, they might have a better understanding, to your point, or not. What I think is more interesting is take a level up from the people who are just struggling to survive, because yes, that layer is always going to be there. But take one or two steps above that. Take someone who has a middle class existence but somehow is always in debt. Right, those are the people that don't understand the concept of spending less than you earn. Let's not talk of people that are in the margins of society.
But you say middle class today, including the middle class. Most people in society today are indebted, heavily indebted.
That's my point.
The middle class is eroding. So I want to come back to Dominic's first point. Rule number one, and whether you want to frame it as you cannot spend more than you earn. It's actually, you cannot spend more than you earn in after-tax dollars. So for me, the logical sequence of events is, number one, you need to know what you're currently spending, all told. And you should have a detailed breakdown of what you're spending money on. Because in the absence of that knowledge, it's very difficult for you to affect any kind of change. The second thing you need to know is not so much how much you earn in income, but what you're left with after tax deductions.
Your net.
What you bring home.
Yeah, right? Because that's what is left for you to pay your expenses with.
Right.
Exactly.
And once you have that knowledge, then you need to break down your expenses in terms of discretionary versus non-discretionary.
Yeah, if you have a mortgage payment, if you have a car payment, you need to pay those things, right? So, yeah, absolutely. You need to understand what your minimum non-discretionary spend is going to be, and then compare that to your net income.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, and if you're at a deficit at that point, well, basically you got an issue. But hopefully you have a surplus at that point. You can figure out where to put the discretionary.
Unfortunately, most people are just materialistic, and this is this goes back to the power of marketing, and people need that. They need to have the iPhone, they need to take that trip, they need to have that car that they probably can't afford.
So you're describing all of the things that cause people to go off the rails.
Yeah.
So
Right.
again, if we want to discuss the importance of financial acumen, why don't we kind of step back and say, okay, when should this stuff be taught?
Because the problem is emotion takes over.
No, I understand that. That's
the problem.
So I'm going to say, in my view, a basic financial management class should be mandatory.
Absolutely.
For all high school students.
Yes.
Mandatory.
Absolutely.
yeah, and early on in high school, not at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Junior high.
Yeah.
Junior
Junior
high,
Yeah, but
just to understand, just to understand the fundamentals of, hey, if you're going to mow someone's lawn and earn, $10 or $15, what should you do with that? Should you, spend it immediately? Should you save it? I mean, just the concept of savings, just the concept of spending, the concept of stuff that you have to spend on versus you want to spend on, just all of these things.
Financial literacy is something that's an important topic right now. Like even though the schools, it's not on the curriculum, but there are organizations that are very much committed to that. Even some of the consumer groups funded by the government, but they have
The
financial literacy services.
government should learn financial literacy,
Right,
but
right.
So I don't think the issue has been or is today the lack of information, but the fact that most members of society, including those who find themselves in financial difficulty, do not access the information that is available to them. To the best of my knowledge, most financial institutions today offer excellent resources online.
Absolutely.
From basic to more advanced, depending on what your level of understanding is.
But that's part of it.
But I'd be curious to know from those financial institutions,
Right.
how many of your customers, how many of your clients actually review these materials?
But that's part of financial literacy. It's also, knowing the resources that are available and how to access them, knowing which resources to go and refer to.
But the same people who are spending countless hours watching mindless videos on TikTok, Facebook, choose your platform, choose your social media platform.
this podcast
are not taking the time. Well, this podcast
is important.
is in part informational.
There you go.
And so these people are not spending any time improving or taking the necessary steps to improve their financial literacy or acumen.
Yeah.
You know what's my second rule? Do not go into debt for intangibles or items which are not necessary. In other words, if you want to go into debt to buy a home, I understand. But to put a trip on a credit card and then pay the minimum every month and pay that trip for the next 5 years, no.
So you said intangibles.
Yeah.
In your opinion,
Yeah.
other than a home, and by the way, this is not for everyone, and we'll come back to that.
No.
But other than a home, is there any other item or asset class that you can think of that you believe people should be okay to indebt themselves with?
One of them, which
Education.
no, a car. But I know it's not the best.
So I'm going to strongly disagree
I
with you.
agree. But let's say you needed to go to work.
You don't.
Well, in some cases you do.
How?
But,
How? How do you need a car to get to work?
If you're an Uber driver.
Smart ass.
No, but Pat, how?
it's at that limit. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Other than a home.
No. So I understand that a car may be more convenient
Yeah.
than public transportation. But I'm trying to understand, other than your excellent example, Noran, where is a car a necessity?
Okay, so-
there's a bias here, so I'll be honest.
Put your
Right.
bias aside. I'm
No, you're right.
I'm trying.
You're right. You're
I think
right.
we're here to help our audience.
Right.
From a
So-
financial
I think families, again, going back to families with young children, and children have activities, and you have a schedule to keep. School activities, community activities, support activities.
if it's
Sorry.
and a lot of us of our generation, we have elders as well. that we have to look after. And sometimes we know we need to go see them like in the middle of the night. Sometimes, you need to take them to appointments. It's not possible on public transit because of mobility issues and so forth. We see that. I mean, that's very much a part of our day-to-day life.
I'm going to disagree with you.
Well, even if so, let's assume that for whatever reason you decide that you do need a car, but there are ways. There are cars and there are cars, and there's ways to
Car sharing.
Well, either it's car sharing or
That's not ownership. I'm sorry. I'm talking about car ownership.
right. So again, there
are myriad services available from public transit to car sharing services.
Yeah, but it's not for everyone. I mean, you can't tell someone you can't have a car as long as they can do the budgeting.
I can't tell anyone that they can't have something.
That's not
my point. My point is a car is not a necessity.
No, you're right.
A roof over your head is a necessity. Yeah. Clothing is a necessity.
Okay, we're not arguing that fact.
No, then everything else is discretionary.
For some people, a car is a necessity.
Anyways,
But assuming that a family has decided that they do need a car for their discretionary use, then there are different ways to get it. There, as opposed to leasing a car where you have a monthly payment. If you can find a used car at a decent price, basically buy what you can afford.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the advice I would give people.
What does that mean? Buy what you can afford.
Well, again, we're not talking about the lowest layer of society that's barely scraping by and can't afford something to eat. We're talking about folks that are in a family environment. Hang on, that are in a family environment. They have some discretionary income. They just have to decide where to spend it and how to spend it, so they're not spending more than they earn.
So I'm going to say most people today, statistically speaking, do not have discretionary income left because they are spending more than they earn. They're breaking your number one rule.
Right.
Most people today are in debt. And they're in debt for reasons other or beyond owning a home and making mortgage payments.
True.
They're in debt because they're acquiring things.
Yeah, that they don't need.
Forget that they need or don't need in their minds, that they cannot afford.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The first question is one of affordability. So I asked you a question, perhaps I didn't phrase it as eloquently as I could have on topic of affordability. My acid test, other than a home, if you do not have the cash on hand to pay for the expense, and whether it's a capital expense or whether it's a trip or some other consumption type of expense, do not make the purchase.
Yeah.
That's affordability. That's the affordability test. If you do not have the cash available to pay for it, don't buy it.
So if your kid needs extra tutoring in school,
there are other means. You know what? My neighbor is an exceptionally smart kid who is actually going to take the time to spend with my child to help him or her master the math basics. Right?
Those are
possible.
There are a number of different avenues available.
Those are not very expensive.
So again, let's get back to
So rule number one, as a reminder, live within your means, i.e., do not spend more than you earn in after-tax dollars.
What about medicine?
No. Let's stick to financial acumen.
Okay. Well,
your rule number two, I would like to modify.
Yeah.
Other than a home, for those who can justify it, and there's a whole exercise you have to go through to assess whether or not you should be purchasing a home or whether you'd be better off renting. Okay? Other than a home, there is no other asset class that you should be indebting yourself for.
Right.
None.
You're right.
Education. But look, guys, I guess what you're saying is like on a reasonable level, it makes a lot of sense, and this is in the best of all things. This is the way we should be managing our affairs.
On education. So you're talking about higher education,
vocational training in order to improve your career prospects.
So I would say, and this applies to parents as well as teenagers. If your intention is to attend post-secondary schools, whether vocational or not, then you should be planning in advance and you should be putting the money aside in order to ensure that you can pay for those studies.
Okay.
Not getting to the point of saying, I think it might be a good idea for me to pursue my education. Let me indebt myself to the tune of 15, 20, 30, $50,000.
So how about this? So I'm doing things right. I'm doing my financial planning as an individual, right? I'm not making very much money because of the line of work that I'm in. One of the things that I need to do is I need to improve my career prospects. Therefore, that requires me to upgrade my skills. Therefore, I'm going to make a plan for training. So I don't have the money right now, so I'm going to borrow money, but it's going to pay off because in the future I'll be increasing my income, so that will be improving my financial standing. So all these considerations, where's the opportunity to really, as a person, develop and put yourself in a better position financially in the future?
Well, there's nothing wrong with doing what you just said.
But you don't have the money at that point.
But hang on a second.
The cash.
Okay, fine. So if you as an individual decide you want to borrow for that one thing, then fine. But at the same time, don't go and buy an iPhone or don't go and do other things. So what you need to do is manage it holistically, right? Yeah. Okay. So now you said, okay, I need this thing. Requires this much money. I'm going to borrow it and pay it over this many years. Fine. But budget and figure it out and say, okay, well, this is what I need to cut back on in order to be able to afford this. And I'm going to tighten my belt for a year, 2 years, 3 years, achieve this certification or this whatever it is, and then try and earn more so I can be better off in the future. But again, do it with eyes open. Don't do it with, I think I can do it. I'll figure it out.
No, they do it with eyes open. They do it with eyes open.
Well,
and there's no other.
Who's they?
I mean, I'm just talking about, working class people who have limited financial means and limited income.
Again, this discussion
who want to improve their situation. I'm not talking about the impoverished here. A lot of the middle class is what I'm describing.
We and our audience acknowledge that you are the champion of the working class. Okay? That being said, please stop referring to the middle class. It is eroding. And one of the reasons it's eroding is not because people don't earn enough money. It's because people spend too much money.
No, it's also eroding because people are not earning enough money.
It's eroding because most people don't know how to manage their finances. They are spending too much money.
People aren't making less every year.
If you look at
salaries are increasing.
Absolutely.
So we have inflation. Things are more expensive as well. But at the same time, there's a choice of what to spend money on. And all we're saying, and I think we should all agree on this, hang on, just let me finish.
Sorry.
All we're saying is get a handle on how much you earn and how much you spend. And if you have that understanding to the penny of the stuff that you need to spend every month because you need to live, your rent, your mortgage, whatever, and you understand how much money you're making net coming into your pocket, then you can make decisions. Hey, can I go out to a restaurant once a week? Maybe, maybe not. Hey, do I go to an expensive restaurant or a cheaper restaurant because I only budget $50 a week or $100 a week for this meal?
Right. Okay, so it's great. It's great theory, but life happens. People have responsibilities to the elderly, to their parents. Okay. People have responsibilities to their kids. People like teachers, professions like teachers and nurses. Are you telling me that they are fairly paid?
But what part of what I said was wrong?
No, I'm not. All I'm saying, it's good theory.
Again, he's championing the working class.
But I'm explaining to you in practice. Sorry, I just want to say that I'm explaining to you in practice.
Shit happens.
It's difficult for people to manage that way, even though the intent is there and they're trying.
But he said this. Dominic said this earlier about putting money aside for a rainy day, and you're describing events that will be considered a requirement for rainy day funds. So shit happens. Your kid needs tutoring. A tree falls on something and you need to now repair it because your insurance doesn't cover it or whatever. We understand that. What you then need is a rainy day fund or a savings account.
But Nuran, do you understand that it's not possible for people to put together a fund for rainy days?
So wait a second. You're talking about the minority of people, Aki. Do you understand that there are people, healthcare...
Statistics show us.
No, not the statistics.
You keep talking about the base of the pyramid.
I'm not talking about the base. I'm talking about middle class. This is
what's middle class to you? What is middle class? How much are you earning for middle class?
Middle class is about an individual 40 to 50,000.
Okay. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
In today's economy, that's what it is.
No wonder the middle class is eroding.
Of course.
No, you've lost touch with reality completely.
Yeah.
Our average salary, in places like in the United States and Canada, is like between 60,000,
60, 70, 80,000, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, not 40,000, 60, 70, 80,000.
50, whatever, but it's 50,000.
That's one person. If you're a couple, it's 120 to 140,000.
Yes. Yeah, but guys, are you telling me that there's absolutely we raised it. We said we recognize that the middle class is eroding. So what is the erosion of the middle class? The erosion of the middle class is that they can't keep up with inflation.
No, it's what he said.
I find it interesting that the predicament society finds itself in today, loosely coincides with the mass implications on society of entitlement culture. So this idea that I am, therefore
I deserve
I
this.
deserve.
I deserve a trip to Tahiti.
You made a comment earlier about getting a grasp on your expenses, right? But I want to just accentuate the importance of understanding, making the distinction between what is discretionary and what is not. And as hard as it is for entitled people to do, it's drawing a solid line on your expense statement that says all of these things may make my life more enjoyable, more pleasant, easier, but they're not necessities. So once you get beyond having a roof over your head, and it's not necessarily a roof you own, it may be a roof you rent, basic clothing, not labels, clothing,
Not this.
not Batman, no labels, basic clothing and food. Everything else in your life is discretionary. Everything.
Yeah.
Even those things that you think you cannot live without, they are things you can live without, and they're entirely discretionary.
so
And the problems you're outlining, by the way, are applying today to people who earn hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And I don't want to hear the argument that, well, there's no excuse for those people, but there is for people who earn 50 or 60,000 a year. No, the problem is fundamentally the same. An entitled culture that lacks financial acumen and doesn't understand that you cannot spend more than you earn.
Exactly.
And what I'm saying is that that well-intentioned approach to finances gets sidetracked a lot by the type of social issues and the type of pressures that most families and most working people face today.
Aki, so
such as medical care.
Okay, Aki. So what we said is yes, expenses, sudden expenses, and expenses that you don't think or you haven't budgeted for are going to come up. If you do own a car and all of a sudden the engine blows up and now it's a $1,500 or $2,000 expense to fix it, or whatever, you hit a pothole, your rim is bent, whatever. There's always something that comes up unexpectedly on a budget.
But it's not.
Hang on. You need to be aware as part of your financial acumen and part of your budgeting that shit is going to happen.
So that's where you said earlier, you need, and this applies to everyone, you need to have a rainy day fund.
Exactly.
Now let's
As Dominic
get
said,
let's get practical about things. How many months reserve do you need in your rainy day fund?
At least 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months.
How many people are able to do
12,
that?
6 to 12.
6 to 12. But I'm going to say minimum.
Minimum
Yeah,
6 months.
Six minimum.
I give that advice to everyone I know.
Okay.
Minimum, you need to have 6 months of reserve. That means 6 months funds to set aside to cover your living expenses because you don't know what's around the corner. You could lose your job. You can run into an issue. Bottom line, if you have 6 months put aside, it's not a guarantee that you're going to be okay, but it's going to put the odds in your favor that during your period of hardship, you're going to have the resources necessary to continue living your life.
Again, it's excellent theory.
But
the reality,
Aki,
you cannot foresee. How can you foresee? Can I give you an example? One example.
It's not about the. Hang on a second. There's something. What we're saying is this is what you should do.
Absolutely.
We're not saying it's easy to do.
Absolutely.
We're not saying that this is going to be simple for folks to do.
But in a lot of...
hang on, if you don't even know that you need to do it, how can you even start the steps towards doing
All right,
it?
so I'm making...
That's all we're saying.
So I'm making $40,000 a year, and I have insulin medication for my diabetes that has gone up exponentially. How am I going to pay for that? I don't have any other insurance
unless you live in the United States and you're not covered by a basic healthcare plan, in most, if not all of Western society, again, with the exception of the US for those who don't have medical coverage, the bulk of your medical expenses are going to be covered.
Okay, but do you at least do you recognize that there are working people that with the best of intentions and the most open-minded approach to financial management are dealing with circumstances.
With you.
Okay,
we're not arguing with you. All we're saying is
we recognize
we're trying to show a path towards financial acumen that's going to make life easier
and I'm
for
just
people.
pointing out why some people might be facing hurdles.
Your argument makes it sound like there are a large number of people.
There are.
No.
Yes.
They are in the minority of society. The minority.
I'm sorry, the middle class declining is not a minority situation.
Now, we just discussed for the third or fourth time that one of the main reasons that the middle class is eroding one of the main reasons
Yes, and
is because members of the middle class are spending more than they earn.
they're not good financial managers.
Instead of building wealth.
So I'm adding another piece to that, and I'm saying that's part of it. And the other part of it is that life has become very, very expensive and very difficult for people, especially who have, family responsibilities, who have health issues. They are dealing, with unprecedented costs. So that's another factor.
You do the best that you can, actually.
So, okay,
That's all we're saying.
Let's go back to our discussion. So what's another rule that you would come up with?
Well, so the first one was don't spend more than you earn. Second one is know all of your expenses, discretionary.
Another rule is do not get a credit card.
Okay.
Unless you have the discipline to use it intelligently.
And pay it off.
Intelligently means that you do not buy anything on credit that you do not have the cash in bank and on hand to cover the expense.
In fact, I totally agree with you because I think using credit cards is a great idea. Everybody should be using credit cards, not debit cards, but pay your monthly statement 100%. Fully.
No, so I'm going to agree with you because I know the way I use credit cards means that everything I buy, I'm paying less than the sticker price for.
Yeah, 'cause you're getting money back from your credit card.
I'm getting money back from my credit card, and my money is working for me.
Exactly.
For 28 days or whatever.
Exactly.
Or up to 45 days.
Yeah,
I also know that I'm in the minority.
Yeah.
Most people are buying something, so there's a sticker price, and they end up paying 30, 40, 50, 60, 100% more than that sticker price because they're paying off the minimum every month on their credit card at astronomical interest rates.
Exactly.
If you don't have the discipline, if you have a spending problem, a shopping problem, do not get a credit card.
Yeah, use a debit card. I mean, these days all the debit cards are like Visa, MasterCard debit cards.
So that's another rule.
Yeah, I totally agree. I use credit cards exclusively. I have never used my debit card to pay for something. Never.
Only at Costco where they don't take my credit card.
You could get theirs.
Yeah, I don't want more credit
Well,
cards.
You get money back.
They take MasterCard.
Yeah, that's right. I have a Visa, so I have only one credit card. That's it.
That's another good discipline.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Most people should not have, unless you have the discipline we alluded to a moment ago, you should not have more than one credit card.
I don't
In fact,
need
you
more
shouldn't
than
have-
one.
You shouldn't have.
I don't spend that much, and my limit
No,
is more than
because what
I need.
happens,
So
when we're talking about, emergency.
Yeah.
If you have credit cards with, good limits on them,
Yeah.
just in case something comes up.
that's what I have. I have one
That's
that
it.
has enough of a limit. I can buy a car with it. So it's like,
That's
what
it.
the hell?
I doubt the dealership will accept the credit card.
They don't. Only for 5,000 at a time.
5,000, that's the limit.
So
But that's an important rule.
Aki,
Right? The credit cards are one of the killers in society.
Aki's looking at us and it's like,
No, I agree.
can
On the
feel
credit
the
card,
steam
absolutely. The credit card, I absolutely. Absolutely.
Lines of
That's
credit.
a trap.
Yeah.
Lines of credit, another trap.
Yeah, big trap. Huge.
Right? So
Huge.
the biggest
how
mistake.
about home equity line of credit?
Well, I was going to say the biggest mistake I see with lines of credit is people who somehow convince themselves that the appreciation in the market value of their home is reason for them to establish a line of credit that is going to allow them to borrow money against the value of their home, even though they haven't paid off their home, in order to acquire a whole bunch of things that they don't absolutely need.
No, but
And that they can't afford otherwise.
Right.
Exactly.
Which is the problem. Spending
in
more
terms of-
than you earn.
Don't do it.
But in terms of debt management,
do it.
just
Yeah.
in terms of debt management, doesn't that make more sense? I mean, your line of credit in interest, absolutely.
You know what
it's
makes
much
sense?
lower. It's much lower.
Correct.
Than the other.
So what makes sense is if you have a credit card bill of $12,000, then you take out a home equity line of credit that's at 5 or 6% instead of 25, 26%. You pay off your credit card. You never use your credit card again,
Yeah.
and then you pay off that 5,
I agree.
6%.
That's what I'm saying.
How many people have that discipline?
Nobody does, or very few.
Very
people
few.
do.
Okay. Well,
So-
that's
the
a
problem.
no-brainer. I mean,
So
That is if you know how to handle. So I mean,
credit cards, lines of credit.
so
These are all forms of debt.
I want to throw another rule out there. If you do have debt and this is based on what Aki said as well. If you do have debt, then understand what rate of interest you're paying on all pieces of your debt. Credit card debt is 25-26% interest.
29.
Or depending, exactly. So you know that credit card debt is the most expensive debt to carry. If you have other vehicles of debt available to you or places where you can borrow to pay off the higher level amounts, then definitely use them to lower your interest payments.
Let's add to that. Actually, what you should do if you have extensive debt and you find yourself in a predicament, consolidate your debt.
Exactly.
Consolidate means take all your debt, put it through a vehicle that is relatively low interest.
Which would be a home equity.
Could be
Credit.
one of them.
Well,
exactly.
not everybody has a home, right? So
Right.
just identify, working with your financial institution,
line of credit if
or
they
with a
give you
financial
one.
advisor, identify the lowest interest-bearing instrument you can.
That's available to you.
Consolidate all your debt,
Yep.
pay off the high interest rate debt, and make it your life's priority to
pay
pay
that down.
off that debt in the shortest amount of time practical,
And don't use your credit card again.
ever.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. And I think that everyone should at least be aware of these things. If you're not aware of the amount of debt you have with different vehicles, meaning credit cards, loans, car loans, mortgage, whatever, all of these things, you need to know how much interest you're paying on these
So
things.
another thing, just for the sake of time, I'm going to introduce is cash flow. So we talked earlier about understanding your expenses. Most people do not incur all of their living expenses month to month on the same basis. In other words, there are going to be months where certain expenses are due, which cause there to be a higher burden on you to pay expenses than other months typically do.
Yep.
You need to understand those month-to-month fluctuations because it means that you have to have enough in reserve, cash, in order to pay off those expenses in the months in which they are due.
Yep. Because a lot of times, if so I've seen that.
Most people's income,
Hand
is
to mouth.
consistent month to month, but their expenses may not be.
Or not, exactly.
Can I provide another rule?
Absolutely.
A lot of employers are offering this now. Deductions at source for savings. So enroll into it. But if it's for retirement, so they can take that amount, send it to whatever your choice of financial institution. So that way, you're not the one that's deciding. It's decided on your paycheck.
So most of those programs pertain to retirement funds.
Yeah. But
And so I'm going to take a bit of a contrarian view and say the only time you should be contributing to these programs is if your employer matches your contributions to any extent, because that's free money and you never say no to free money.
exactly.
Otherwise, I would encourage people to look at other vehicles, investment vehicles, which can accrue on a tax-free basis. Whereas your retirement savings generally provide you with a tax deduction up front, but will be taxed fully when you withdraw them at a later date.
But hopefully at a lower marginal tax
So
rate.
No,
we
not
know you don't
necessarily.
like the RSP / 401k kind of things.
It's not that I don't like them.
Yes, you only like them when the employer also matches. We spoke about that before, and we have things such as a tax-free savings account in Canada, and I think there are other similar ones in the U.S. and other countries as well. You know, we can have a debate on the tax implications and what that means, but I think the most important thing is for people to just have a savings vehicle, whether it's going to be tax sheltered, whether it's going to be part of a TFSA or something similar like in Canada or whatever. For me, it's a great idea if you don't have the discipline to do it yourself, to have them do it on a paycheck per paycheck basis through your employer. I think that's a great idea.
Well, you can do it through your employer for sure, but as all I'm pointing out is that generally with employers, it is retirement plan that they are generally managing on behalf of their employees or coordinating on behalf of their employees. There are other ways to do direct withdrawals. So you can meet with your financial institution and say, I'm paid on, twice a month, for instance, on this day and this day. I want a certain amount withdrawn from my account systematically every payday and placed into a vehicle that is going to provide investments for my future.
True.
And I think what we're all agreeing on, whether we favor one vehicle or another, is from a very early age, and I would say as early as 18, 20 years old, you should be planning for your future. There will come a day for all of us where we no longer work. And yet, when we no longer work, we have to generate sufficient income in order to cover our expenses. So as much as you need to know what your expenses are today, you need to also get into the discipline of planning what your future expenses are likely to be. There's inflation, there are other factors that come into play.
Yep.
And if you don't have a future income stream that is sufficient to cover the cost of those expenses, including the rate of inflation, then there will come a time when you run out of money. And no one can afford to run out of money.
Well, being young and poor is okay. Being old and poor, not okay. So,
and don't underestimate the cost of healthcare in the later stages of life. It's disproportionately high.
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, and it can definitely bankrupt you as an individual if you don't, or you just don't get the care or the health.
Well, that's what happens.
Yeah.
You just don't get the care. That,
and then you just basically you're just gone.
So we've talked about a whole bunch of things that apply to individuals. What, if anything, would you add when you think of individuals who are in a relationship, a partnership, a marriage?
Very rich.
So, do not marry for love and marry for money. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not sure I would go down that path, but it's advice from Dominic.
It's an option.
and not surprising advice from Dominic.
But if you can't, then manage your money. Actually, that's a huge stress point in marriage.
There are people I know who are in relationships where I'll say one person is reasonably disciplined,
exactly,
in managing their finances, and the other isn't.
Spends like a drunken sailor.
These are difficult situations.
Yeah, I know.
That there has to be a parallel. You need to find somebody, that's got the same discipline as you do, or else.
Well, it
It's
causes.
not- it's not gonna end well.
Would you agree that at the time that people are choosing a life partner, they give that very little thought?
They do.
Oh, very little thought.
Very little.
I don't know about
And then they
that.
get divorced many years later.
Not for that reason.
That's part. That puts some stress in our relationship.
This could open up a whole
we're not going to go
door
there today. That may come up in a different podcast. We're not going to go there today.
That puts some stress on the relationship.
too personal at this point.
I don't think you give it a lot of thought, but it's there. You see it. You see the discipline and everything. And
But people ignore it.
well, I don't know.
Well, you're blinded. You're blinded by love.
You meet someone, right? And they drive a nice vehicle. I say, yeah, nice car, very impressive. And they say, yeah, thanks. It costs me $1,000 a month.
Yeah, but if
It's like, okay, so right there, I have an indication that.
in fact, if she doesn't say next month, I'm a little short this month. Can you lend me $1,000?
Well, it's interesting that you would say she, because the other thing I've noticed, and perhaps, and again, it's not a widespread survey. Most of the relationships that I'm aware of, the woman, where the relationship is male-female, the woman is managing the finances.
Yeah, I said she because I'm not gay.
Not yet.
No, but that's not the point.
Noted.
That's not the point. I'm just saying, as an observation, and again, it may just be the people I know, but the majority of them, the women are managing the finances.
Yeah. In our case,
Wasn't the case in my.
no. Well, in my case, it's both.
She was managing the expense side, and you were managing the
The
income.
revenue
Actually,
side.
I just had to go earn more. That's all.
In that case, we both manage our own money. I mean, I have no idea how much she has.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have no clue.
Okay. Does she know how much you have?
Really?
Yeah. So she's one up on you,
Because
Dominic.
she sits on the meeting with my financial planner every year.
Do you remember when she insisted you get a life insurance policy?
Does she lick her lips when she's listening to the numbers?
Yeah, so I have no idea how much she has.
So do you manage? So again, and I'm just going to throw this out, and not to know your personal situation, but your thoughts on, when you're in a committed relationship, managing your financial affairs separately, jointly, or a bit of both?
I have a definite opinion on that one.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Yeah. I think for women, their biggest and most effective tool is financial independence.
Mm-hmm.
Once they have that, no man can take any control over you. Having 2 daughters, I've told them since they were young, this is important. Be financially independent because then no man can control you. Same thing.
They heard you, they listened to you, and they applied.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, my wife agrees. I mean, we discussed that. Before getting married.
So am I to interpret your answer as you believe that individuals in a committed relationship should be managing their finances separately?
Yeah, but common goals and common sharing and yeah.
Okay.
Because my investment outlook is different from my wife.
Mm-hmm.
She's more conservative. She's more doesn't want to take any risks.
Right.
I'm all about risks.
Calculator risk, folks.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
and it works. I mean,
Yeah. Aki, what do you think?
That's a tough one. I think a bit of both, but I think essentially at the heart of it, it should be, it's part of the strength of the relationship. It's financial complementarity is also an essential part of the relationship. So you need to have that. I guess I have known couples where they're the complete opposite when it comes to the financial management. So you have, the one partner that is very serious and does the planning that we talked about and does everything right, and you have the other person who's absolutely clueless. And that creates, so that is a tension in the relationship. But for ideally, I think that it should be like a full partnership, like a corporate partnership. It should be a full partnership of equals.
What does that mean, a partnership of equals?
It means that you should agree. I mean, to be transparent about your respective finances, your respective salaries, and then of course
But so awareness is one thing, but should they be managed independently, individually, jointly, or both?
I think both. Both.
Okay. Naren?
Well, in my experience, I was doing the management and yeah, it there was a mismatch, let's just say, between styles, between myself and my ex, and that was part of the things that didn't go well between us. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, this is many years ago. So what it is it's difficult. When you start in a relationship with someone, these are not the questions that come up initially. And over the years, by the way, when you're in your 20s, you may not be the same person as you are in your 30s and 40s and so on. So things change, lifestyles change, people change. Mm-hmm. And if you don't change in the same direction, but change in different directions, then it puts stress on a relationship. So financial acumen and financial planning were high on my list of things to do, and I've always been interested in it, and I enjoy actually looking through stuff, trying to be more efficient, more effective, and so on. Whereas my partner at the time, didn't have those thoughts or those feelings, and wasn't really aware of those things in her life.
What's your position on that?
So, I think, and there are exceptions, but I think that for the most part, in a committed relationship, there should be an element of your finances that are joint, mm-hmm. regardless of what each partner earns or brings to the table. The commitment means that you are committed to doing things in partnership and together. And I think that each should maintain some level of independence as well, in part because you never know what the future holds in store.
Exactly.
And also because I think that while you're in a committed relationship, there should be some measure of independence. And what I mean by that is you shouldn't have to ask permission to your partner every time you want to do something, right? I mean, you should have some resources that are available to you to do as you please.
Excellent point.
I say for the most part, because there are situations, and I'm not saying this was your case, but what you described brings to mind is where there's such a contrast in style. So the individuals are highly compatible. They have a very, very strong relationship, a very strong union. But when it comes to financial matters, one is extremely knowledgeable and adept, and the other one really could care less and has no interest. And I think that in those situations, you have to adapt what you do in managing your finances. Now, for the sake of time, I'm gonna throw another topic out: professional guidance and assistance. In my view and in my experience, it's not all it's cracked up to be. So one of the reasons I believe it's essential for everyone to have a minimum level of financial acumen is, even though you may rely on professionals to guide you and assist you, you have to know enough to recognize where A, the person's advice, guidance, and or management of your financial affairs is not as strong as it should be.
Yep.
Or even though they're professionals, some people may try to take advantage of you. And that happens more often than most people imagine. And you need to be able to identify that.
Yep. 100%.
So you should have the discipline. And I tell people that, don't look at your statements every day, but on a monthly basis, you should be reconciling your income and expenses, making sure that everything aligns, that everything is going according to your plan and budget. And you should be doing systematic reviews with the people who guide you, assist you, or manage your finances to ensure that their performance is in keeping with the expectations and the measurable goals and objectives that you set out. And if they're not, you need to hold the person responsible and accountable.
Yep.
And don't hesitate to make a change. It's not because they know more than you do in financial matters that you should be relying on them
That's the issue.
forever and a day.
Most people are intimidated.
Yeah, but Pat, if we follow those simple rules that we came up, or that we mentioned today, you'll be fine.
You should be.
Yeah. So
Generally speaking, yeah.
exactly. So it doesn't have to be that complicated. Yeah. The more money you have, the more you can get. But just follow those simple rules. You'll be fine.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I went down that path a long time ago. I was in my 20s when I gave up on working with financial planners. Just because I saw I was actually doing a case study in my MBA with my financial planner, and I went and asked him a bunch of questions. He responded perfectly. He knew, risk assessment, this and that. He was able to respond to my questions perfectly. Did he do any of those things for me? No, he did not.
Right.
What did you do?
Well, I stopped. I took all of my
You
out
did.
and I started doing
You
it
closed your
myself.
account with them.
Yeah, I closed the account and I started self-directing. So I started self-directing my own portfolio in my 20s.
that would-
Yeah,
My late
and
20s.
for what it's worth, in terms of managing your investments, not necessarily all your financial affairs, but your investments. Warren Buffett, who's arguably the greatest investor in history, believes that most people should not rely on professional money managers. The fact that statistically less, and I believe it's far less than 10% of professional money managers outperform the market as a whole.
Yeah, and now you have index funds, ETFs
Right.
that you can buy.
And that's Buffett's recommendation.
exactly.
Invest in index
You have to
funds.
do a sort of a hybrid, you know what I mean? I have both.
Well, you could, again.
Well,
you-
I went down the exact same path you did. So I started out with someone who was back in the day, a broker, if you will, who was
Yep.
assisting, and I found that the investments I was directing were far outperforming what that person was providing me in terms of professional advice.
Yeah, putting you into mutual funds where he gets
And-
kickbacks and so on.
And if you look at what these people charge, it is outrageous.
Yep.
Outrageous.
Yep.
And so I took it on my own, and I have no regrets doing so.
Same here. And again, I mean, just for folks to look at, if you have investments or if you have money to invest, look at index funds. Look at something like SPY, SPY. It's an S&P 500 index fund. QQQ is for the NASDAQ. There's others. Just, look for those as just something that is relatively safe and will just grow with the market.
You should give a disclaimer right now.
And for sure, and no knee-jerk reactions, right? So the fact of the matter is, investing is a long-term proposition.
This is not this is not
Exactly.
investment
No,
advice.
exactly.
But if you're looking for stuff, I mean, look for index funds because in general, diversification is baked in. The MERs, the management expense ratios are super low, so you're not paying a ton of money
so
for.
I'm going to interject. Say, just go educate yourself.
Yeah,
there are
exactly.
a lot of online resources available that are
Exactly.
outstanding. If you're interested, go read the material. Go consume the material.
Exactly.
Very, very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Final thoughts, guys?
Pat will post his website on the Romeo
Nope,
website.
I will not.
Final thoughts, guys. I mean, money is important. This is what allows us to live, to grow, to live. Basically, you need to have your finances in order. And if it's important to you to have your finance or to understand finances, then basically learn. All of these things are available to you. All of these tools are available to you. Go to your bank's, a bank site. Go to YouTube. Go just look for advice and learn. And slowly but surely, if you can figure out how to budget, if you can figure out how to do this type of, expense modeling, all of this stuff with these guidelines of not spending more than you earn, I think you're going to be fine.
do not spend more than you can afford. Do not use credit for useless things.
So lack of financial literacy and financial common sense is a big reason why we're seeing some of the difficulty that the middle class is undergoing. I also think the other big cause is that there is a macroeconomic climate that is making it very hard for the middle class to make ends meet, even with the best of intentions and the best of information.
So I would offer a similar suggestion to two of my cohorts here, and that is if you follow the recommendations we've provided today, I believe that you will find that the level of stress and anxiety in your life that is caused due to financial issues is likely to diminish significantly. You may still find yourself wanting for certain things if you're materialistically inclined, and many people are, but you're going to eliminate a lot of the financial stress and anxiety in your lives.
And go buy a lottery ticket.
Don't buy lottery tickets.
Sorry.
Okay. On that note, guys, good conversation. And thanks for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye.